Welcome, everyone. This is our third session together in the NatureTalks online seminar series. And today we will be talking about, obviously, interpretive writing. We will be looking at some case studies and examples, as this is probably the best way to have a first approach to interpretive writing. We will then have our usual Q&A if there are questions, a little break, and then we will look at some practical tips to do interpretive writing. And then we'll have a little activity on reworking an interpretive text. So yes, so this is our third appointment. So we are halfway through the seminar series. There will be two more dedicated on digital media for interpretation, which will be led by Georgia. And then, of course, just as a reminder, later on this year, we will have the in-person learning labs in the 5 countries of the project. So let's start with a little icebreaker, a walk among the dead, which sounds ominous, but actually just a way to make a start. So imagine you're on holiday in Italy, in Rome, and you are sightseeing with your friends. You're going around and visiting, ancient ruins, archaeological stuff, and you're visiting this ancient Roman site, and you bump into something like this. Okay, a panel. So just without going through it, don't read it yet. At first sight, just at first sight, do you feel attracted to it? Can you can share some thoughts in the chat box if you want. Do you like it just at first sight? Would you stop to read it? What do you think?
I would stop, yes.
Yes, there's not right or wrong answer here, right? It's just just asking for you for your first impression. Someone feels dizzy, someone finds it boring. Okay. All right. So now take a look, a closer look. Take a moment to just go through it. You don't have to read it all. Just go through it, skim through it, just see what it is about. There is an off. Okay. It's not attractive. No, definitely. And it is too much, yes. Overwhelmed. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, so I would feel like that as well. This is actually a piece of a real panel somewhere. And so what don't you like about it? Yeah, someone said they find it overwhelming. It's too much text. It's boring. What else? Anything else? The lines are definitely too close. Yes, the spacing is not right. No illustrations. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay. So there's a lot of things. There are a lot of things that don't work in this piece. Yes, you have to stop and read it close. Yes, no colors, of course. So it's not aesthetically attractive. The spacing is wrong. There's too much stuff. And yes, if you want to read it, you have to spend quite some time to go through it. Okay, so yes, you identified a lot of the issues. There's a lot of text. There's also a lot of difficult language. So there's a lot of technical jargon which is not explained. So basically, this panel is not making any effort to attract neither our attention nor our interest. And so the common reactions would be just the ones that you had. So people would wonder, well, what is the point? Why should I be interested? Why should I care? Or at the same time, sometimes people feel intimidated. Sometimes people blame themselves for not being able to understand, not being interested, or someone just, it gets bored and just walk past it. So if we don't do something if we don't adjust the way we write our panels, we just end up talking to ourselves, because this kind of panel is written for a specific type of person in mind, someone who is a specialist, someone we can take their interest for granted, and also someone that we can take their knowledge for granted. So in the best case scenario, people will stop 3-5 seconds and then walk away. In the worst case scenario, people don't stop at all. And we have missed an opportunity to tell something useful, meaningful, important about our place. So how can we change this? How can we rethink how we tell the stories of our heritage places to our audiences? How can we make our content more relevant, more accessible, and more engaging for them? So let's look at what is interpretive writing. Now, interpretive writing is simply means applying heritage interpretation principles to written content. Obviously, traditionally, this would be things like visitor panels, brochures or leaflets, or guidebooks, or exhibition labels if you are in a museum or in a visitor center. Obviously, today we also have other tools like app guides or any kind of digital content that you can access with your mobile phone, just scanning a QR code, for example. So basically, it's about any content that is used during the visit, which is supporting your first-person experience, your live experience. So what is the difference between interpretive content and communication content? Because this is a question that sometimes people come up with. So in theory, interpretive content supports the in-person visitor experience. So it's any media that supports your experience during the visit while you are there. So it enhances your experience of the place. Whereas communication content is available to you anytime, anywhere. So a website or a virtual tour, you can access that before, during, after. It's unrelated, it's not strictly connected to your being there. However, this distinction, as you can imagine, is more and more blurred because, of course, we can use website content during our visit if we want to find out more information. Of course, you can go back to an app guide you have downloaded on your phone during your visit. You can go back to it after your visit, and you can use it as a source of, to go more in depth with the information you received on the site. So this distinction is actually blurred, considering how our technology has evolved in the last 20 years. But so it's good to keep interpretive principles in mind, even when you are writing for communication channels. So, of course, in those cases, when you have a website or even social media, of course, you have to first apply the design and writing principles that apply to websites and to social media, to text optimization. But if you can, you can keep in mind the interpretive principles we're going to talk about now. They are going to be useful anyway, and they're going to be more useful in case people are visiting your site, but they are recurring to their Google search, okay, to get more information. So the principles of interpretive writing are exactly the principles of interpretation. And you already know this. We have talked about this during our first session, but also during the second session with Caterina. So your writing should still do the relate, reveal, and provoke work. Okay, so your writing should connect heritage phenomena, with everyday lives of people, with universal concepts or concepts that are relevant and important for everyone. Your writing should reveal, so you should go beyond telling facts and telling factual information to reveal deeper meanings behind the facts. And importantly, it should provoke. So as we said in the previous sessions, we do not just transmit content. We're not just passing a piece of content from the interpreter to the person, but we are triggering something. We are triggering curiosity. We are We want to trigger reactions into people. And these reactions can be thoughts, can be actions, can be sharing, can be reflections. So we want to provoke even without writing. Let's look at some cases, at some examples. Okay, so let's look at the relate first. This is a panel in some gardens in the US, and look at the title. It says, "A tree is like an apartment building." So here it's making the relation between the tree and something that is part of our everyday lives. So an apartment or the idea of home. And the whole panel is about the concept, it revolves around the concept of home. So, for example, home sweet home. Insects live here. Birds live on this other floor, etc., etc. So the concept of home is making that relate job. Another example, this panel is about photosynthesis, and it says making sugar from the sun. So sugar, even sun, obviously, but it is translating what photosynthesis means in simpler terms, yes, but terms that can be that are part of our daily lives. This is another example from the Egyptian Museum in Turin. So this is part of an exhibition, the ground floor actually of the museum, which is dedicated entirely to ancient Egyptian vessels, containers, any type of container. Okay, so here what they are doing, just by putting two up the ancient Egyptian and the modern equivalent, okay, just by putting those two things close, they are building a parallel which makes it immediate for the observer to understand what that object is about. And what are they writing in the labels? I will make it bigger for you. So the first one says, what do we use for cooking? And the second, where do we store liquids? How do we transport water? How do we bake bread? So cooking, liquids, water, baking, these are all everyday concepts, and they are formulated in terms of a question. So this is also doing another job, the provoke thing. Let's look at the reveal. So we said that we don't want to stop at facts, but we want to reveal deeper meanings. Now, revelations for the reveal point doesn't mean that we have to make big revelations, okay? So here we have a simple exhibit, which is this little piece of elephant skin. And the panel says, elephant skin protects the whole body. So this is not a big revelation, but it is telling a meaning. It's telling what the skin means in this case. And the facts, where are the facts? The facts are there in the smaller text. So it says it's heavily wrinkled and very sensitive. Elephants work hard to bathe, etc., etc. So it is giving us facts, but the prominent spot is not taken by facts, it's taken by meanings. Because the idea of, in this case, the idea of protection, protecting the body, is the deeper meaning that we are connecting to the phenomenon of the skin of the elephant. So meanings first. Of course, we also have bigger revelations. So this is a very nice project in the US, Baltimore, about ghost rivers. This is a public installation and walking tour by a contemporary artist. And it's about these rivers that are not visible anymore. They are underground, so they're not a part of the Baltimore landscape. And the installation and the panels help people visualize something that is buried below the streets of Baltimore. So let's look at the text. It says, it's easy to believe that the landscape we have, sorry, this is a typo, we have inherited cannot be changed. But hidden rivers and hidden histories do not always stay buried, right? So this is going to make a revelation about something hidden. This idea that we should reveal things and the idea that we can help people see what is not there through interpretation is actually a common challenge, something that is frequently happens, whether you are dealing with archaeological heritage or natural heritage, underground heritage, or intangible heritage. So here you can see that sometimes you don't really need words to make a revelation with an interpretive panel. Sometimes you can reveal just by inviting people to look in the right direction. So you can use frames. Okay, in the first case, the frame is accompanied by a text as well, a written panel. But in the second case, as you can see, that's just the logo, the name of the park, and that's all you have. Okay, so sometimes just inviting people to look in the right direction, to not just see quickly, have a quick look, but watch, observe. That's also something that can bring to a revelation. Okay, then you have the provoke. So we said we want to activate the visitor. Now we can activate the visitor in very simple ways. For example, if we use simple questions in the title, like in this case, what's in the pond? No, we are triggering curiosity. We are making people wonder about something. So this is a very simple way to start provoking. You can also ask people to do things. So invite people to look, to smell, to hear, or to change their position. Maybe they're standing right in front of a panel. You can invite people to go around the corner and discover something new. We can also activate thoughts and reflections. So sorry about the quality of this picture, which is my own and very old phone camera, but it's a nice example that I like, so I'm just going to describe it to you a little bit better. So this is from the Plato Digital Museum in Athens. And this panel contains a quiz. The panel says, how do you decide to act? So in the rest of the exhibition of the museum, you will have encountered Plato as a character. There are several corners and rooms dedicated to several aspects of Plato's philosophy, etc., etc. This is the very end of the exhibition, and it's dedicated to the ethics of Plato. So here you find this panel and it asks you, how do you decide to act? And then it describes an ethical dilemma. So something like, you find yourself in this difficult situation where you have two choices. So you are at a turning point. Would you go for option A? Would you go for option B? Would you go for option C? And so once you pick your answer, you can see that there are some drawers, some little foldable panels on this shelf beneath the panel. So you can pick the letter, you can pick the lid corresponding to the letter you have chosen for your answer, and you will find the kind of philosopher you would be. So it will say, you are, if you've chosen answer A, you are a pragmatist. If you've chosen B, you are a relativist, etc., etc. Meanwhile, people will have thought about their answer. What would I do in that situation? Sometimes reflections can go beyond objects. So this is, again, the Egyptian Museum in Turin, which is one of my favorite places, in case you haven't got that. But this is, again, the same part of the exhibition, but a different corner. And here they are still putting one next to the other an ancient object and a modern object, but the questions are different. The questions are not much about relating to your everyday experience. So they're not about cooking, they're not about baking, they're not about what these objects are for, but the labels are asking you, is this artisanal, handmade, or industrial? Is this to repair or throw away? And what can you do with a broken vessel? So this is asking people, is triggering people to think about what is our current production model? What do we do with things when they got broken? How good are we? If something is handmade, would we throw it in as easily as we throw away something that we just buy from industrial production in a supermarket? So this is provoking people to think about the current challenges of society and of the world today, just with a 3-word or 5-word question. You can go even further than that. So same museum, they obviously host mummies, quite a wide collection of them. I don't know if any of you has ever visited it. And so mummies and exhibiting human remains is quite a sensitive topic. We see them in museums, but those are still dead people. So what the museum did a few years ago was they run a survey. So they asked people questions about what they thought about displaying human remains. So they would, so you could basically use this Google form. You would scan the QR code and you would access a Google form, simple one, asking a few questions. I think 10, something like that. And they were asking, what do you think about this? Should we display these human remains? Should they be actually sent back to Egypt where they were supposed to be? How should we treat them? They did not only collect the answers, but they did two things. First of all, they shared the reports, and even they shared the main data. As you can see here, some histograms, some graphs in the museum. But they also used these inputs from people to take action. This survey helped them structure or design or make decisions about some parts of their exhibition. So when you ask people, when you're triggering with provocation, when you're triggering responses, we also have a responsibility, not just of transparency, but also of taking it seriously. If you're asking people for opinions, it should not just be consultation, fake participation. We should take it into real consideration. Okay, and we can use interpretive writing not only on panels. We can write basically on anything, any object. So here, for example, you see this is the staircase of a treehouse that is a scout reserve in the US, but also a visitor center. So it's a place where a lot of people walk. A lot of people, actually everyone who wants to go to the interpretive center needs to go through this staircase. So the staircase is actually a very strategic place to send a message to your audiences. And here you can see other examples. So for example, you can use the panels with benches or with other, these are not benches, sorry, chairs or benches are much more common actually. So you can actually talk to the people where they are. It's not people coming to read your panel, but it's you talking to people where they would normally pass or sit or spend some time. Now, other interesting things, other interesting panels are signs of warning, which are obviously quite important in heritage sites, but especially if you work in a protected area. These are signs that have a lot of don'ts, of course, because it's about what is forbidden, what you can't do there. And obviously they are super important because some of these things are for safety, for the safety of people, for the safety of animals, for the safety of nature, for the safety of ancient ruins. The issue is that a lot of people do not accept no's and don'ts, just listed as a list of imperatives. So what other options? Do we have other options? And can we use them? So sometimes explaining why you can't do this, why you can't feed the animals, why you can't, I don't know, lit a fire, will help people get on board. So if you explain the reason, then you activate a part of responsibility in the visitor. Okay, so here, for example, the panel is saying, help keep wildlife wild. Help, asking people for help, for their help, usually works better than saying, don't feed the birds or don't feed the bears. Okay. So here you can see help keep wildlife wild is the title. Then you still have some don'ts, okay, and you have the prohibition signs here. But at the same time, at the same time, in the second part of the panel, you can find the explanation. Human food can kill. Wildlife are easily attracted to human food, therefore, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so giving an explanation, it's usually the best policy. You can also use irony. So here, look at the panel. This is basically reversing the perspective. It's not a warning to humans, but it's a warning to animals. Of course, it is a warning to humans, but it helps people create, it creates an empathetic connection with the animals. So some unaware humans will attempt to feed you food that is hazardous for your health. By depending on people for food, you and your bodies forget to forage for natural food and you starve to death in the cold. So it's still explaining that this should not be done, and it's still explaining why it should not be done, but it's phrased in a way that people are put in the shoes of the animals. Now, these signs of warning, it's also something that you can play with. So this is the National Trust series of warning signs, and they have played with the idea of attention signs, notice signs, don't touch signs. They have turned them into something positive. So for example, please do touch the trees or even hug them. Reserved for fun and games. Attention, you will need this to spot the abundance of wildlife in this area. Or notice, which would normally be a notice sign. Notice, it's actually an invitation. Notice the beautiful wildflowers as you walk through the woods. Take pictures, smell them, and enjoy your day. So these are obviously all invitations to action. So they are doing a lot of, they're doing basically the three jobs of interpretation at the same time. They are revealing, relating, and provoking. But they're also playing with the stereotype of a notice sign or a warning sign. They are transforming the place in a space of protection in terms of prohibition in a positive space, in a space that welcomes you to do things. So I'm not just telling you the things you can't do, I'm also inviting you to do nice things positively. Okay, so any question on any of this so far? Let's see if we got something in the chat box. Sasha, what was it that you like? You said very cool. Which one you liked? Irony. Oh, the one, the bird. Sorry, this one. Okay. Yeah, this is nice. It's a nice one. Okay. Anything, anyone? Any question on any of the things we have covered so far? No? Okay. Oh, thanks, Georgia. Yeah, these are, some of them are quite nice as well. And actually, I must say, it's easier to find nice examples of interpretation done right in natural parks, especially in the US, than in European sites. But this is obviously, of course, I mean, it's for a lot of reasons, but also because interpretation was born there and it's something that just, they've been doing all along. So, okay, so I actually finished this a little bit earlier, so I'm going to ask you guys, do you want to take a break or do you want me to go on? Just write yes in the chat box if you want to have a break. Okay, go on, go on, go on. Okay. All right, so let's look at some practical tips. So first of all, do not forget the triangle, which means that interpretive panels should not be about general topics. So they should always refer to a phenomenon, something that is right there in front of us, and they are supporting the experience of the phenomenon. They are not just about general topics. So for example, you can see here, this is one of these examples where, what is the panel about? It's about wetlands. Yeah, so what? Yeah, panels are not books. There's nothing wrong with books, of course, but panels are doing a different job. Then, very important to remember, we should always keep in mind that there is a hierarchy of information that we should follow in panels. So, as I said at the beginning, most people do not stop to read panels. They completely ignore them. Some of them pay attention approximately for about 3 seconds. What do they do in those 3 seconds? They take a quick general look at the panel and decide if they want to pause or walk past it. Those who decide to stay for some reason stay for about 30 seconds to read a little bit. Okay, so this might have a look at that nice panel. There's an interesting word or there's an interesting graphics. I'm going to look at what it says. I spend 30 seconds skimming through it. And then only a very small minority, which are mostly experts or people who have already a specialized interest in the topic, they stay and read more for about 3 minutes. Even the most passionate ones hardly stay longer than 3 minutes. So this 3 seconds, 30 seconds, 3 minutes rule, 333 rule. It's something we should have in mind when we design how we want to incorporate information on a panel. We should prioritize our content. So obviously, just like when you write a press release, the most important things need to go on top or in a prominent position in the panel. Okay, so you want to, first of all, you want to have hooks to catch the attention. So you can have things like questions or catchy pictures or even eye-catching colors, something that attracts attention. Then you want to give the most important message in the shortest time as possible, because you only have 3 seconds or 30 seconds, okay? So don't overload the top part of the panel with information. The key messages that you want, the key message, I would say, that you want people to leave with, they go on top. And then everything else, then the information for medium interest people, and then all the other details that only the specialists or the experts or the most passionate and most committed will read. So the details go at the end. And obviously this is because if you leave so even the reveal, you want it to happen very soon. Actually, as we will see in a few slides, it should happen already in the title. That way, you make sure that even the people that leave only after 3 seconds after having read the title, at least will have got something out of it. Okay, then we should remember that people, as I said, a panel is not a book. People do not read panels in a linear way. They take an overall look of the panel to get the general idea. And eye tracking studies have shown that there are other patterns, but these are the two, the F pattern and the Z pattern. They are the most common reading patterns. So in the F pattern, people will start looking from top left and they spend some more time there. Then they go through top right. So basically that's where you would place, for example, your title or your main, your key message or your strongest meaning, okay? And then they go down a little bit, again, go horizontally from number 3 to number 4, and then they go to the bottom. In the Z, you can see that the Z pattern is like a zigzag. Okay, if you have longer patterns, this will be a longer zigzag. You will have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you will have 5, 6, 7, 8 again as another Z underneath. So, so you can use these kind of patterns to decide where information should go on your panel and use the hot spots of the eye tracking to place information accordingly. So this is why, as I was saying, titles are quite key in a panel. So these panels, they all look quite nice. You can see the design is really nice, nice pictures, nice timeline. However, what do you think of the titles? Just share your impressions in the chat box. Boring. Sasha, this is the most common reply today. Boring. They're not eye-catchy. Okay. And yes, definitely too general. They are too general. So they are titles. So Mesolithic settlement or Sandhill country, or even Ordovician fossils. Okay, the last one has two problems, has two issues in one. So first, it's not an interpretive title. It's the topic. Okay. Second, it's using yes, like like lecture chapter title, exactly. So this is about the topic. We are going to talk about Mesolithic settlement, but what do I care? As a visitor that is not an archaeologist or not an anthropologist, they don't get anything out of it. They don't even understand what it is, most of them. So we should not use objective titles like these. They are very general and they fail from the start. If I am an average person, I want something to attract me. I'm deciding, should I stop to read this panel or not? The title drives me away immediately. And then I have missed a great opportunity to talk about these other amazing and interesting things that are in the rest of the panel. So titles are key. They are our first opportunity to attract the attention and the interest of people. So we should use catchy phrases, but also it's not just about being catchy. It's not just about being marketing-like. There's nothing wrong, by the way, with being marketing-like, but it's not just about being catchy or clever. The interpretive principle for titles is to include a meaning in the title already. A meaning or a universal concept or a general concept that is meaningful to everyone. So not facts, not Mesolithic settlements. And you can use the title also to do provocations. If your title is phrased as a question, or if your title, you don't provoke only through questions. Sometimes just statements can be provocative. That in that way, as I was saying, even those who only read the title will have got something. So if I only read the title of this panel here, which we have already looked at before, it says a tree is like an apartment building. Okay, no, now I'm not a naturalist. I have very little notions in terms of botanics or wildlife, but a tree is like an apartment building tells me a lot. And it paints a picture. This is also something that we should remember to do when we use language in interpretive panels. It's important that we use words that paint a picture, that build a visual image or a sensory image. Okay, so continuing this about language and about what kind of language we should use to make panels accessible. So first of all, we need to be concise on a panel. We cannot say everything. We cannot say a whole, maybe some of you that were also attending the previous session with Caterina will understand this. When we were talking about the theme and how to write in one sentence what is important about a place or about an object, we found it very challenging because there's so many, because we know the place, we know the object, we know the phenomenon so well that it's very, very difficult to select and do without some information. We feel it's hard to sacrifice information for the sake of functionality, okay? We can't say everything. Overloading visitors with information will achieve the exact opposite effect that we want. It will overwhelm them and it will drive them away. So we need to select information, and ideally, obviously it depends on the kind of panels you're working on, or whether you have a single panel or a series of panels. There are a lot of variables to be considered, but ideally, as a rule of thumb, I would suggest we should include 5 key elements in a panel. Obviously, the title, a nice graphic, which can be a picture, it can be an infographics, it can be a diagram, it can be anything that is useful to add content. So you should avoid images that are just decorative. They're useless. They're occupying space on the panel without saying anything, without adding anything. So decoration is not useful. So title, nice graphics, and 3 short paragraphs. The first contains the more important information, and then as you go down, you go more into detail. So basically, the more you go, so the people that will go to the end will have the full picture, but you need to make sure that you passed on the first most important information, second most important information earlier. And about language, I was saying about language. We are not all experts, and we need to use language carefully when we write. And especially a lot of people are not first, for example, if we are adding a panel in English, a lot of people are not native language speakers. So we also take that into account. So these are some basic tips for using plain English for accessible interpretive writing. You should always use shorter words rather than longer words. So if you can express the same concept with a shorter word, you should go for that. And in some countries, this is not what we are taught to do. So in Italy, for example, but I know this is also the case in Greece, the longer the words, the most complicated, the words, the most complex sentences you use, the cleverer your writing is. So we are used to this practice, and the experts, curators, scientists who write the interpretive panels in our sites usually follow that habit. And the example you saw in the first slide in the icebreaker today is a result of that. So if you can say the same thing with a shorter, simpler word, go for the shorter, simpler word. Then obviously avoid the technical jargon. Or at least if you want to use it because you really think it's important and you think it makes a difference that people should learn that word, you can, but you should explain it. So I don't know what your experience is in your protected areas or in the places you work in, but here there's always been this debate about the use of Latin, for example, of Latin terms in panels. And I must say, I'm not against the use of Latin, as long as it's explained, because otherwise it is an accessibility barrier. And this is about accessibility. It's about not just physical accessibility. It's about cognitive accessibility. It's not fair that some people should not access some content because they haven't studied Latin at school. Actually, even those who have studied Latin at school sometimes got problems with it. So, okay, so avoid it or explain it. Okay, then keep your sentences simple. Long, complicated syntax does not help. So ideally, you should have one idea per sentence. And also, you should try to use active verbs as much as possible, because passive verbs are more complicated, but they also feel distant, more formal. So they create a formal gap between the visitor and the content. You can also vary the length of sentences to create a little bit of rhythm when you write. So if you're always using, 5-word sentences, the rhythm will always be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. After some time, it becomes boring. So you can vary that. Of course, you can use personal language. So you can address the visitor with you. What would you feel if you were in that situation? What is your home like? And of course, you can use rhetorical figures to make your point. So you can use metaphors, you can use comparisons, you can use the example we just saw about the apartment building. The tree is an apartment building. Actually, that was the tree is like an apartment building, so that was a comparison. Okay. So these are just a few practical tips that you can already start using in your interpretive writing to make it work better. Now, something else that you can use if you want to have a measure of how complex is the text that you are writing is readability statistics. So has any of you ever used this while writing content? This is something that you find even in Microsoft Word, for example. Anyone? So if any of you has ever tried, just drop a line in the chat box. But basically, if you write any text with your Word application and you run the grammar check, you can select, okay, Cinzia has used it. So you can use this setting in the grammar check to have an idea of how readable your text is. Now, of course, this is a rule of thumb. So this is not chemistry, this is not physics, but it gives you some idea of more or less if you are doing a good job or not with your writing. So Cinzia, what was your experience with the readability statistics, if you would like to share?
Well, first of all, I'm a journalist, so
Okay.
writing is my job. So I need to write texts, but also, museum panels and whatever, which are a specific length. And so I need to know how many words or how many characters I write. But also, I try to write, whatever you said till now, short sentences, one concept per sentence, and whatever. I try to be very strict on this always. And all these statistics help me after I've written, I check so that if I missed something, they pick it.
Absolutely.
So this is how I not just for not for grammar, but for the overall the overall construction of the text that I'm writing.
Yes, perfect. And actually, I think being a journalist helps a lot because you have we have to on the sort of if you are not born a journalist, then you need to learn how to do that in your job. So I think you
right.
have
Well, I must say Freeman Tilden was a journalist.
Yes.
And when I read Tilden, I said, so what? This is what I've been doing in my job.
Yes.
He applied our rules, the rules of journalism, to heritage, to what he called heritage, to what was called heritage interpretation. So those are the rules. They are kind of universal, I must say. But anyway, then there are some differences. But anyway, the basics come from journalism because it's a way of writing, of communicating that works. And it has been working for almost 200 years now. So, so it does work.
Absolutely. So the challenge is actually to bring these principles in the job of writing this kind of content for visitors. Okay, so thank you, Cinzia. And yes, so what Cinzia just described, so you basically you draft your text and then you run these checks to see how you're doing. So you shouldn't really focus on, exact numbers, but this is like a rule of thumb. It helps you understand whether you're doing a good job or not, whether there is something that you should still refine in your writing or not. So for example, here I will just draw your attention on these two things, the flash reading ease Kincaid, the flash reading ease and the flash Kincaid grade level. Oh, and by the way, I mean, if you want to know, if you need guidance on how to activate this check, you can, well, of course, I'm sure you can ask Google, but if you need any help from us, you can just drop us a line, okay? So the flash reading it's just a measure of how difficult or easy a text is to read. And in this case, the higher the number, so it's a number, okay? It's a number from 0 to 100. And the higher the number, the easier the text. So if a text scores from 0 to 30, it's very difficult to read, and it's something for university graduates, for example. If it's higher, then it becomes easier for a wider audience. The Flash Kincaid grade level is the other way around. The higher the score, the more complex the reading. Okay, so this is based, so from 0 to 18, this is based on US grade level, but because we are not from the US, I also added some book equivalents. So for example, if a text scores level 2, then it's like entry level, people who are just starting to, books that for people who are just starting to learn. If it scores something around 8, it's something like Harry Potter. If it scores 16 above, it's an academic paper. Okay, so this is just to give you an orientation. Now, as we have time, I would suggest to do our 5 minutes break now, okay? And then, so I will not show this. Let's do our 5 minutes break now, and then we will do a final part on some exercises. Okay, so we will be back at 5:35. And we are back. Okay, so for this last part, let's do a little exercise. So this is an extract, sort of the first panel I showed you. Take, let's say, 7 minutes, and we will see how we will do, to reformulate at least the first part of this paragraph. And you can take your notes, and then you can share some ideas in the chat. So essentially try to apply some of the things, some of the principles and suggestions to simplify at least the first long sentence. Okay, 2 more minutes, and then we can share some examples in the chat box. And don't worry if it's not, I mean, it's just a quick exercise, so this takes longer. So just an attempt. Okay, so if you have anything written down, even half a sentence, it doesn't matter, and you can share it in the chat. So while we wait for some answers to come in, let's just look at this piece and what was wrong with it. Of course, it's a whole block of text with a lot of... okay, so we have from cremation to burial. So first of all, Cinzia retitled it. Ancient Romans used to cremate their dead. However, as Christianity started to gain ground, cremation gradually began to give way to burial. So here you can see the journalist at work. Well, very well done, obviously, Cinzia. What happened to a Roman after death? Death in ancient Rome did not mean only the end of life, but also the beginning of a carefully prescribed farewell ritual. So far. That's okay, Damiana. This is a very good start. You also used the question in the title, so very good. And death is obviously a keyword here. So that's the thing. So we are talking about. We are not talking about. We are talking about funerary customs in ancient Rome, but that title would, as it is now, is not going to be very interesting for a lot of people. In ancient times, when people died, had a more humane treatment. Okay, thank you, Athanasia. So this is just to get the, have the gist of it. Life around death, ancient costumes and customs, or how to live after death, funeral fashion, or dying in ancient times. Final makeover before eternity. Okay, so this is also very good. Humor is obviously very useful, and it works. It works very often. Sometimes, of course, we have to be careful because on some topics which are, maybe culturally sensitive, we don't want to joke about. But in some other cases, it's a very good idea. Okay, so well done, everyone. Another before and now funeral. Okay, nice and simple. Thank you, Sarah. Pushing up daisies, Roman style. I must say, Georgia, I didn't get that. Sorry. As Christianity spread in the Roman Empire, funeral traditions changed. Cremation became less common and burial became the main practice. Yes. So the point is make it simple. So on the one hand, these are two challenges. On the one hand, we want to make it simple with using accessible languages. On the other hand, we don't forget about the reveal, relate, and provoke. So is an informal, often humorous idiom meaning to be dead and buried. Okay, pushing up daisies. Thank you for explaining that, Georgia. I didn't know. I missed that idiom. How to get rid of body in Rome. Okay, I can see that you're doing really well with humor. Okay, cool. So as I was saying, the task, we have a twofold task. On one hand, we want to make it simple because we want accessible language. On the other hand, we don't want to forget about what is the mission of the interpreter. So the reveal, relate, and provoke, which is another way of saying make it relevant, make it close to people's lives so that they can approach it in a way that they are familiar with what we are talking about and not complete strangers, okay, to the topic. Another bad design thing about this piece is that it's a whole block of text which does not have any paragraph sections. So another golden rule when you are designing an interpretive panel is to give some space, to let it breathe. So for example, okay, we're going to look at this. Okay, so this was my own reformulation of that panel. And as you can see, I didn't change the title here. I'll show you later why. But essentially, I used 2 paragraphs with space. I should have used an indentation here as well. So this is important because it's less intimidating. So when you approach a text, and I mean, you will have this feeling whenever you're approaching a book or an article or anything, especially on a digital device, you want to split your text in chunks, because that way people can, it's easier for people to skim through it, and they don't feel overwhelmed. Overwhelmed is one of the words that a lot of you used when I showed you the first bad example in the icebreaker. So making paragraphs makes it less overwhelming. Okay, so okay, so this was my reformulation. If you look at the statistics, so these are the statistics of the original piece, and as you can see, the flash reading ease is 0, which means we are at the very bottom of the score, and so it's very difficult, best for university graduates, and this is confirmed by the Flash Kincaid grade level, which is 31, which means this is, no, sorry, it's the other way around, up. Sorry, something got wrong here. Anyway, I must have got this. It's the other way around. Okay. Anyway, the scores here were very, very low, so this was very difficult to read, whereas this is sorry, so this was the other way around. I'm sorry. So when you simplify, the stats also tell you that you're doing well. So you can use those stats just to check, basically. Okay, and this is something that you actually already did. The final activity was to find a title. A lot of you have already done so in their exercise. Actually, you started with those in a lot of examples that you shared. So you can use titles again to spark curiosity, to provoke, etc., etc. Just to show you, this is not very far. So my reformulation was not very far from the strategies that you guys decided to take. Okay, so a question, and then a general universal concept, farewell, beginning. Some of you said something like, what happened to a Roman after death, or life around death, etc., etc. Okay, so in the end, the main idea behind writing interpretive panels is that a panel should not be just a text that transmits information. It is a start of a conversation. This is also why you should not ask yourself, you should not demand yourself to put everything you want to say about that phenomena in one panel. It's just an interpretive panel is just the start of a conversation. You want to plant a seed in the mind of people so that they will keep thinking about that afterwards. So you want to pass that conversation into the minds of the visitors and into the mouths of the visitors, so that they keep talking about it even after even when they have walked past it, even when they have left your site. It's the start of a conversation. It's this planting of a seed. Okay, so we are approaching the end of the session today. So if you have any question, please use the chat box or ask, just speak out loud, or meanwhile, you can fill our usual evaluation form in the end, which I'm gonna paste the link here in the chat box.